colleagues that for certain roles, you need to also be very aware to the fact that certain roles will definitely have other freelance work they are doing. So, for example, all of your tech gurus and your tech MCs, all of your tech guys will definitely have some other freelance roles that they are doing. And you also look at your marketing roles as well. They will definitely have one or two side consultancy by the side. So you also need to be very aware of it. And the onus on you is to ensure that you're able to track productivity for yourself, because a rigid employment law that says, a rigid employment contract that says that your employees will not freelance, it's either they're doing it on the ground or they will most likely not want to stay in that kind of organization. There's also youth unemployment and entrepreneurship opportunities. So unemployment is on the rise or on the decrease, depending on which data you're working with. If it's the rebased data, it's on the increase. I think we're about 4% now. And there's also entrepreneurship opportunities. So what has happened really is not that they have gotten creative with the numbers. They have brought in the informal sector, which is the largest sector actually in Nigeria. So the informal sector, the barber by the roadside, the grocery store by the roadside, they have brought them in, and the fact that they're also creating employment. So now they are now being counted as part of employers. So that was what has accounted for the reduction in the unemployment rate. And then there's also the demand for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplaces. It's no longer business as usual. So employees are well aware to their rights, and the onus is also on the employer to ensure that there is some semblance of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the organization. And for us in Nigeria, it means that you need to have some form of gender balance. You need to have some form of you need to have policies in place that guarantee that disabled employees are able to work in your organization. And not just policies there, you need to also put into practice. There needs to be an enabling environment for them. Nigeria is a heterogeneous country in terms of our tribes. You also need to ensure that there is diversity in the organization. It's no longer business as usual, where you go into certain organizations and if it's owned by people from a certain tribe, you tend to see people from a certain tribe outnumbering and in critical positions. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is now the order of the day in most organizations. So we'll look at key labor laws and regulations. There's the Nigeria Labour Act, which outlines employee rights and employee obligations. And we know that this is very vast. Even as it's very vast, there's also the arguments that it is also outdated, in the sense that we've had it since, I think, the 1960s or 70s. Then there's the National Minimum Wage Act, with an update on wage policies. Just last year, we had a new minimum wage passed into law, and all organizations also have to adhere, given as long as they fall within the policy, within the wage policy catchment area. So long as you have the minimum required number of employees, you need to adhere to the national minimum wage. And then there's the Pension Reform Act, which from the 2004-2014, that brought in retirement savings and contributions, that now makes it compulsory for organizations to, with a certain defined number of employees, to ensure that they remit into the employees' retirement savings accounts. Data protection and employee privacy laws. For us in HR, so very often employees want to know that their data is protected and that there's an employee privacy law. And a lot of times when perhaps we request for information, or other employers request for information, we find that there's quite a bit that's covered by employee privacy laws. So these are things that laws and regulations. NDPR is something that is very key. And every organization, every reputable organization needs to ensure that they adhere to it. So going further, key employee laws in Nigeria, the Labour Act of 2004 upholds the rights and obligations of employers and employees. National Minimum Wage Act, the Employee Compensation Act, sorry, this should not be 2019, the Pension Reform Act 2014, which is the more recent one. ITF Act, Trade Union Act, and collective bargaining regulations for organizations that are unionized in most O&G companies, in most manufacturing companies, financial institutions, the HoReCa industries. Most of all these organizations have trade unions in place and collective bargaining regulations in place, which the organizations need to adhere to, which the HR professional needs to be very abreast of in order to ensure that they do not have, there's no existing friction that can lead to business interruption. So let's come to employee obligations and compliance. This is where we're going to spend quite a bit of time, and then we're going to also ask, I'm going to be asking questions, and I'm going to be expecting contributions from every one of us. So the first one, contract of employment and statutory entitlement. Would all agree with me? Show of hands, would all agree with me that that's like the basic standard in every organization, that there has to be a contract of employment? Show of hands. Now, the reason I'm asking this is because we see certain things on LinkedIn and in certain other fora where employees are saying, oh, I resumed, and within the first 3 months, I did not get I did not have a contract of employment. I've even particularly had a personal experience where a family member resumed and wasn't in a role and wasn't given a contract of employment. And I tried to get her to know that that is not a good role, but because she was desperate and she needed a job, she said, okay, let me just manage it. And quite as expected, within 2-3 months, things had gone sour. And of course, she had to leave. No contract of employment, no, nothing binding. She can't even list it on her CV as a role where she has been. Her last month's salary was not paid, and it was all shades of wrong. That whole transaction was all shades of wrong. So that's why I need us to respond. Show of hands, use your reaction. We do agree, and in our different organizations, that contracts of employment are binding and are available. I don't see the hands here. Lab chapter. Okay, Sheung Priscilla, thank you. Thank you for responding. Lua Pelumi, thank you for responding. Okay, cool. So we'll move on to ensuring fair wages and benefits. Now, this can also get tricky where we get to say what is fair and what is not fair, what is standard. So the rule of thumb is also that there are industry standards, but there's also organizational ability to pay. And within organizational ability to pay, you need to ensure that all your employees are compensated fairly in terms of their salaries, in terms of their benefits, and that you whatever it's your compensation policy is something that can stand in the light of scrutiny. There's also managing contracts and gig workers. Most organizations have full-time employees. They have fixed-term contract employees. They have gig workers or contractors that just come in, work on a project, and they leave. So you also need to be able to manage them effectively. So what is applicable within each contract? So what are the regulatory requirements for each contract? And do you have contracts with individuals, or do you have contracts with organizations that are like outsourced partners to you? So you need to be able to effectively manage them to ensure that there's compliance all through. All remittances need to be made as at when due. Then there's also the health and safety requirements under the Factories Act. There's health and safety is something that is required for every organization, regardless of if you're a manufacturing organization, a producing organization. Health and safety, employees want to know that they can come to work and they will go home in one piece. So what are the measures that the employer has put in place to ensure the health and safety of all their employees. And even outside the workplace, do you have an active health insurance scheme? Dependent on the number of employees you have, there's also a minimum eligibility for it. But there's a health insurance scheme for every pocket. There's HMO for every pocket, regardless of what your budget is. You can be able to get a plan that covers your employees. There's even the government employee, there's the government health insurance scheme. I think Lagos State has one, Last that's very cheap. So you need to also, the employer is obligated to provide minimum of health and safety requirements for the employee. Tax obligations, the big one. Now with the new tax law that would most likely come into play towards the middle of the year, are you compliant in terms of pay, pensions contribution, NHF, NSITF? How compliant are you at the moment and in the past? Do you provide equal employment opportunities and anti-discrimination policies for that safeguard the employee and ensure adhere compliance to it? Because you see some organizations, they have these policies, very nice to have in their HR manual. When it comes to practice, when it comes to implementation, the story is different. And then you now have certain discriminations and you have certain prioritizations of certain employees versus others. So it's an employer's obligation to ensure that they provide equal employment opportunities for all of their employees. You need to have workplace policies on sexual harassment and misconduct. Now, this is something that is currently in the public space. So we have a public figure, the number 3 citizen of Nigeria actually being accused of sexual harassment. And to a large extent, that has not been treated well. Both parties have not even been given the opportunity to substantiate or to disprove that claim. That is not the way that it's supposed to run. And a lot of times for us HR professionals, me in particular, I tend to get this headache from the public sector because if we run our organizations the way the public sector is run, it will not bode well for organizational culture and individual engagement. So workplace policies on sexual harassment and misconduct is something that every employer is supposed to have. And as much as we try to ignore the public sector, unfortunately, we cannot ignore them because presidencies that are set there are also set have its ripple implication on the private sector. So this is one area that is very key. You need to ensure that you have it standardized because, like I said, presidencies that are set there would also be set in the organizations. And so the reason why you need to have this policy is to ensure that somebody does not try to take advantage of any loophole. Yes, Peter Azazua says that Natasha has gone to the UN to protest her perceived treatment, and the UN has said they need to hear from both parties. So that is what we are saying here, that the right to fair hearing is a right that is ingrained for every employee. Ideally, what should have happened is Natasha has made an allegation. She should be given the opportunity to substantiate those claims, and the Senate president should also be given the opportunity to also disprove the claims, to clear his name, rather than it's the way it appears that he's been swept under the carpet. That will not bode well for any organization at all. Organizations also have to be able to adapt to evolving regulatory requirements and implement workplace policies for inclusivity and safety. Inclusivity and safety is something that is very key. Part of the reason employers and line managers are complaining about Gen Z is because, of course, they want an inclusive work environment. And some of the ways that this manifests is in them standing up for their rights and saying that, okay, so it's no longer business as usual, the old boys club. We want to be able to, everything needs to be transparent in terms of how employees are treated across board in terms of compensation. And of course, your workplace has to be one that is very friendly to employee wellness, and that has to be very friendly to employee wellness and employee well-being. So employee rights and protection. Every employee has the right to fair wages and salaries. Every employee has the right to protection against unfair dismissal. You cannot dismiss an employee based on the feeling of the moment. And it's something that employers have been taken to the industrial courts for. And we see the industrial courts coming back with judgments in favor of the employee. So that is something that every HR professional, every organization needs to be very adhered to. And at this point, I'd like to stop and ask, what are the steps that should be taken before an employee is dismissed or an employee's contract is terminated? Someone, you can unmute yourself or you can share in the chat room steps to be taken before an employee is either dismissed or terminated. So let's share in the chat room. What are the steps? We are in a room of 32 professionals. So what's your disciplinary and grievance procedure? If an employee has committed an infraction that could either lead to termination or dismissal, what are the steps to be taken? Let's just quickly remind ourselves so that we're sure that we're all on the same page and nobody from this room, this current room, will be dragged on LinkedIn for being a party to an unfair dismissal or termination. Any hands up?
Sorry, please. Can you take that again? I didn't hear the last statement you made before the LinkedIn.
Okay, so I had asked that we should share what are the steps to dismissal or termination of an employee. So if an employee has committed an infraction, what are the steps that need to be taken in order to ensure that no professional will be dragged on LinkedIn for being a party to an unfair dismissal? Okay, so Sage says we should check employees' disciplinary records. Okay, can we have any more? What are the steps from the moment that the employee commits the infraction? What are the steps that need to be in place before we can get to a point where we can say we have satisfied all the requirements? Do we have, okay, we don't have any hands up. Okay, Sheung has their hand up. Sheung, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so basically we need to ensure that we follow the necessary procedural disciplinary procedures that has been set in the organization, which will ensure that there is a fair hearing and equity, in listening to or in managing such situation before termination. So in practical terms, you might start from one, then continues, you can now move to then afterwards exit, depending on the gravity and in line with existing policies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheung. I'm not sure if it was my internet. I think I lost you at some point, but I think I got the meat of what you were trying to say.
You hear me? Okay. Is it clearer now?
Yes, it's clearer. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, so thank you, Francesca. Disciplinary hearing. Ibade says if a formal written warning has been issued to the staff, review company policies and employee contracts from Abiodun Daramola. Yemi Giwa, review the policy of the company that particularly speaks to disciplinary procedures. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much, Shehu, for sharing your thoughts. So we all have the knowledge. Every disciplinary procedure has to start with a query issued to the officer with respect to the offense. Thank you, Felix, for also pointing that out. Believe has their hand raised. Okay, Believe, please go ahead.
So once I got that immediate payments refused to meet. I personally wrote to mail.
Believe you can unmute yourself and share.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I think the proper thing to be done is basically to go through what you have on your contract of employment or your employee manual. Or I think basic ingredients should be maybe like an action, something that happen depending on the weight of offense. You could move to maybe like a verbal one to probably document that verbal warning. Just a brief note the person's file, right? Then you can maybe the next one might just be like a written. Then you probably move to whatever stage you define, maybe like the final one in the role. So after then you can make a decision. However, there are some cases that we need to summarize this. So have this depending on what you also crafted in as well. Maybe like fraud, if it's proven, it leads to immediate termination. So yeah, and I guess that's one of the reasons why yes. Well, I guess those basic ones should.
Thank you, Believe. Thank you, Believe. I'm happy to hear that in the room that we have the right idea. We have the right knowledge on the steps to ensure that there's no unfair dismissal or termination. And like we've said, really, so we need to have this policies and practices. We need to have it documented in our policy, and then we need to also adhere to it to ensure that every employee is protected against unfair dismissal. So there's also the right to leave, annual maternity leave, etc. So there's been a lot of buzz about is annual leave, is maternity leave, annual leave consuming, and a lot of times we tend to tailor towards what the organizational policy says. And we find that a lot of organizations tend to lean towards maternity leave being annual leave consuming with a lot of justification being made for it. But however, we do know that ideally it should not be, and according to the labor laws, but it's a lot of times we fought between labor law versus organizational policy and with a lot of justification for it. But however, at the end of the day, you need to adhere to what your policy says. And there's also this recent, I saw something on a group recently. Someone had posted a question to say that a single lady was pregnant. And the organization is now caught between, do they approve maternity leave for her, given that she is not yet married? And everybody was unanimous in saying that the organization are you the morality police? And why maternity leave is not for married people. Maternity leave is for a pregnant woman who's about to give birth in order for her to be able to bond with the child. And that reason is already existing. You can see that she's pregnant. So a lot of organizations do not have this policy clear-cut and spelled out to ensure that the rights of the employee is upheld. A lot of organizations do not have policies on perhaps surrogacy, adoption, and it's something that, though little, it's something that can be an employee dissatisfier because people do have certain life decisions to make. And if you do not provide that right for the employee. They will go to a place where it is provided, which is why you see people flocking to the multinationals. And when they get into the multinationals, they do not want to leave. And then we tend to say, well, the multinationals do not hire. They tend to have a better retention rate. There's also the right to safe and healthy work environment and the right to unionize and engage in collective bargaining. All these are employee rights that need to be upheld by the organization. Some other employee rights are working hours. Your working hours, if you say your working hours are 8 to 5, it should not be 8 to 8. You need to ensure that your employees have some semblance of work-life balance. So if you have also put in place a policy that says that this is your compensation policy, things like this is the frequency of compensation review, this is the compensation that is attributable to employees in in certain grades. You also need to ensure that all of these rights are upheld and employees are able to exercise their rights in your workplace. Career progression, promotion should not be at the whims and caprices of the employer or at the whims and caprices of the manager. There needs to be clear policies in place to ensure that your organization is a great place to work. What's your policy on bonus? What's your policy on profit sharing? All if these have been if this is in place in your policy, if this is also indicated in the employee's contract, you need to adhere to it in order to be seen to walk the talk and to fulfill your promises. All these have implications on employee trust. All these have implications on retention and engagement as well. So, recent reforms and outlooks, labor law reforms and proposed amendments. Like I said earlier, the labor law is way overdue for review. And when we eventually get to review the labor law, we're also going to see that a lot of the recent National Industrial Court pronouncements are going to, in turn, become law. Already, there are certain precedents. So the labor law reforms and proposed amendments is something that we really look forward to. In the interim, though, organizations should also not be caught on the wrong side of international laws and reforms. There's also the impact of technology and automation on jobs. A lot of people, there are a lot of concerns about technology impact and automation. Apologies. So there's also the impact of technology and automation on jobs. Recent employees in the workplace are very technology savvy, and employees are also looking for ways of process enhancement, automating and cutting out any non-value adding rules. So how does that also affect the workplace? There's government initiatives for employment creations. The federal government and state governments are also very at the forefront with initiatives for employment and job creations with the different agencies and parastatals and committees driving this as well. Then there's all the elephant in the room that is always every time every organization runs a survey that if they do not already have remote work policy in place, it's something that always comes up, remote work, hybrid work. My organization is fully on site because we have to also attend to customers, and it's feedback that I always get every time. Like every time I run a survey, I have my basics and definites that I know will come from. I also want to work remote. Unfortunately, for now, we are unable to get to that, but there are also some other benefits that we have put in place in order to be able to cushion the effect of being 100% on site. So for the organization, what is it that you are able to give? The economy is not smiling. and employees want to work remote, hybrid. Lagos, for most of us that work in Lagos, Lagos is also not an environment that is very supportive of fully on site, because a journey of 30 minutes can take you 4 hours on a very bad day or even more. So what are the outlooks for the organization? What is your organization putting in place in order to ensure that they are a great place to work? And then there are also some emerging areas of compliance in the workplace that every employer and every HR professional needs to adhere to. Things like data privacy, things like the next point that I have, garden variety benefits. Garden variety benefits speaks to the fact that employees are a lot more empowered these days, and they are asking for different benefits. So as an example, you have employees of different generations in the workplace. You have the millennials, you have the Gen Z, you have the Gen X, you have the baby boomers that are retiring and leaving. Increasingly, we are finding that there is no one size fits all benefits, as most traditional organizations would have it, that when you are perhaps an officer, these are the benefits that are accruable to you. When you are a manager, these are the benefits that are accruable to you. Senior manager, director, and so on, and so we go on. Increasingly, we are having employees say, okay, there are certain things that are important to me right now. At this stage in my life, these are the benefits that I want to have. These other benefits are not very important to me. So can I swap this for this? What's the value of this benefit? So for example, employees when they are single, if perhaps the person is blessed with very good health insurance may not be very key to them. You see them, they come into the workplace, and 3 months down the line, you're chasing after them to complete the HMO registration documentation. A few months or a few years down the line, changes. The person gets married, the person starts having children, and now the tables turn. Now they are the ones that are after you to say, okay, this is my HMO benefits. My spouse is not yet registered. My child is not yet registered. I want to have additional HMO benefits. Maybe there are some other XYZ benefits. So, for example, there's a supplementary allowance that goes towards transportation. Okay, so can I have that added to my health insurance so that I get a higher benefits plan? It's conversations that are increasingly coming up in the workplace, or employees at certain stage in life where they want to have a home of their own and to move away from the tenant category. And they're saying, I want a mortgage opportunity. So these other benefits are perhaps not key to me now. I have a fully functional vehicle. I do not want you to give me a status car. Rather, I want you to convert it to a mortgage benefit. In the private sector, we are seeing a lot more of that, and organizations are unable to remain rigid to benefits with the way it used to be. So these are recent reforms and outlooks that employees, given the new crop of employees that are coming into the workplace, employees are beginning to pick garden variety benefits. So it's like a supermarket where they can pick and choose. Okay, today I do not want to buy rice, whereas I want potatoes. Tomorrow I want rice and I do not want potatoes. Within my benefits, I want you to be able to provide this to me within the benefit limits that I have. So these are some of the recent reforms and outlooks that we find that is coming into the place of work. And the HR professional, the organization is also supposed to be very at the forefront of it. Underpinning all this is the principle of fairness, to say, if I want XYZ and my colleague wants ABC, and we are at par in terms of our grading and in terms of the benefits that should come to us, you also need to be able to be fair to us. It's not a case of maybe Chidinma wants this because she doesn't want, so she wants this, we give it to her. Whereas Peter wants that, and then we give that to Peter. But when we balance it out, it's not fair. So the principle of fairness needs to come into place and to ensure that you are not unfair to anyone or to any of the groups within the organization. And also to also critically mention is, as much as the garden variety benefits conversation is coming up all the time, you also need to ensure that you are complying, because employees can lead you down a path of where you would also slide into non-compliance. So they are the basics and they are the regulatory requirements. You need to ensure that, compliance on all of that. So practical steps for businesses and HR professionals. So you need to conduct regular legal and HR audits. So your policies, how often do you review them? The rule of thumb is that at least in every 3 years, you should have reviewed. Even within those 3 years, if there are policy changes, you need to ensure that those policy changes are incorporated. If you need to have an addendum to your policy, you need to have that. So you need to conduct regular legal and HR audits. You need to have an active legal team. You don't always call your lawyer when somebody has sued you. You should also speak with your lawyer before you bring in any new laws and regulations. Little things and dissatisfiers, like where employers say, where employers say employees will now be surcharged for coming late. You need to speak with your lawyers, because such regulations, such rules will not hold water in a court of law. And like I always advise our colleagues, some of these little things are things that are very big distractions that at the end of the day, you will find that it would have been better for you if you had not gone down that path. You need to be able to drive engagement, punctuality in other ways than throwing the stick at employees. Stay updated with, excuse me, I have a cold. Stay updated with legislative changes and ensure that you do not run foul of any legislative change. Implement strong HR policies and workplace ethics. Implement in practice and not just in principle. Promote a culture of compliance and fairness. We cannot overemphasize that. Because it's humans that are running organizations, every one of us on this call is human except for the AI assistants. There is the tendency to slide into favoritism. You cannot take that away everywhere that you have people. People would have preferences for certain people for whatever reasons. It looks like my child. I remember one lady said, "Oh, Chidinma, my daughter's best friend is Chidinma." She started calling me her daughter's best friend. So all these little things can tend to bring about favoritism. This person is from my tribe. This person has done me a favor in the past. So you cannot overrule that in the workplace, because we are dealing with humans with feelings and emotions. But you need to ensure that there is fairness and equity in the organization, and that you promote an inclusive culture that caters to all generations, all tribes, everyone, regardless of whatever demography that they belong to. Every employer needs to ensure that they invest in employee training and career development. Training is one of the things that are usually the first to go when you're working with budget constraints. But even if you are not doing external trainings, there are KSSs, which is knowledge sharing sessions, that you can put in place to ensure that there is training. And at all times, you cannot overemphasize the importance of training for an organization. Because I believe that when an organization is actually even going through tough period, that is even when they should train in order to be able to, so that their people are able to bring in fresh ideas. And then things like training bonds. Well, the courts have already said that it is illegal. So for organizations that still practice it, you can't enforce it. The employee-employer contract is always one that is at will. which means that it's a willing employer, willing employee. At any point that any of the parties begins to get unwilling, if the employer wants to leave, or if the employer wants you to leave, or if the employee wants to leave, you need to ensure that they are able to leave peaceably and amicably. You cannot force somebody to work for you if they do not want to work for you anymore. So even as you invest in employee training and career development, you also need to have it at the back of your mind that you cannot bond them. And what's going to happen is going to happen. If the employee wants to leave, they will leave. But if they stay, what happens if they stay and you did not invest in them? Your business will be worse off for it. Rounding it up again with saying seek legal and HR fact consultations when necessary. And I don't think it's even just when necessary, all the time, at the back of everything that you need to do. So for every HR professional, you need to be very conversant with your HR policy back to back. You need to ensure that you always adhere to your HR policy back to back. You need to ensure that your HR policy is also in line with labor laws and international laws and regulations, because the world is a lot more global. We have people that have relocated to other companies but are still working for their employees remotely. So in that case, you cannot say that it's only the Nigerian labor law that would impact, because so even when we come to things like tax, you pay tax in the states that you're resident. So we're also at the point where the labor laws of your resident areas may also come into place if anything goes to dispute. So let's ensure that at all times we are on the right side of the legal and the policy stipulations. So in conclusion, the employment landscape is rapidly changing, and we need to understand and adapt to new laws because it's very crucial. Compliance ensures business sustainability and employee satisfaction. It's often the case that organizations think that compliance is not necessary for sustainability. So employers often put sustainability ahead of compliance. But compliance is actually necessary for sustainability. We've seen various examples of organizations that fail to comply to employment laws and regulations or to other financial regulations, and today they are no longer a going concern. So compliance is important for business sustainability and employee satisfaction. So the HR professional needs to stay informed and proactive to navigate these changes successfully. So, and when it comes to compliance, regulations, what do the laws say? Legal systems, what are the standards? What are the rules? What are the requirements? How updated is your HR manual, your HR policy? Is it in line with the recent employee laws and trends? Do you have HR manuals that still speak to the baby boomers, whereas you have the different generations, the Gen Z, the millennials, the Gen Alphas, who are also coming into the workplace, and you have an HR policy that is not friendly to their generation? Of course, they will not stay. You're going to see a high attrition rate, and your business will also not grow, because you also need to have this diversity in your business in order for your business to grow. So let's ensure that we are compliant. And in conclusion, I'm going to read this quote from Dave Ulrich. It says, the most important thing that HR can give an employee is a company that wins in the marketplace. It's not just about the skill you've got. And me, I'm also going to add this one. It's not just about how many TGIF sessions or happy sessions that you've created. It's how those skills will drive outcomes that make a difference in what matters, which is why a lot of times we are accused that we tend to be HR for the business. The truth also is that yes, you need to have a balance, but the business needs to comfort, because if the business sustains, everybody, if the business wins, everybody wins. If the business wins, everybody is happy. You cannot give from what you do not have. So strike a balance, but ensure that the business wins, and everything, all of your activities, all of your initiatives, you need to be tailored towards ensuring that the business wins, because as the business succeeds, all the employees succeed as well. Thank you. I will
Thank you,
take
Chidinma.
questions now.
Thank you, Chidinma. A virtual round of applause for Chidinma, please. A virtual round of applause, because this is a technical topic and it's also a vital topic for HR practitioners, the legal aspect and everything that you have taken us through. Thank you so much. We will have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. And we indulge you to please drop your contact in the chat for us as well, so that if we have additional questions, members can reach out to you. And even if we want to engage more in these topics, in these insights that you have raised, we can be free to reach out to you and have a very meaningful conversation. So first of all, I have one question there, and it came from Peter Osazua. And what does the question say? Please clarify the difference between termination and dismissal. And it's looking at the focus on salary, the payment of salary in lieu of notice. He went on to expatiate additionally, under what circumstances does a dismissal disqualify an employee from receiving his or her salary? I don't know if you like to take a stab at that, Chidinma.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for that question. So dismissal is termination as a result of a disciplinary action. Dismissal is bringing to end an employee-employer contract as a result of a disciplinary action, while termination is a general end to an employee contract for other reasons. So dismissal is for cause, termination can be for anything else. So termination can be as a result of the organization right sizing, but dismissal is the one that is as a result of a disciplinary action. So now, in terms of what in payment in lieu of notice, when you terminate, it's either you give notice or you pay in lieu of notice according to what the employee contract and what your policy says. So you pay the employee, or you pay the employee in lieu of notice, or you give them notice that by XYZ time, your employment contract with us would have ended, or your employment contract with us is ending effective immediately, and we're going to pay you 1 month, 2 months, 3 months according to what your contract says. However, dismissal, because it's as a result of a disciplinary action, so an infraction has been committed, and according to the policy, the punishment for that is dismissal. The employer is not required to pay notice if your policy has stipulated that. So if you are dismissing an employee as a result of fraud, and you have gone through the process, you have gone through the objective process, according to what your policy says, according to what the laws say, then you can dismiss without paying in lieu of notice. But if you have not gone through the process and you dismiss, that is an unfair dismissal. So for example, Adam has been found with his hands in the cookie jar, and you ask Adam to pack up and leave. You did not issue a query. You did not give Adam the opportunity to defend himself. That is unfair dismissal. You need to go through the process. You need to go through the process to ensure that Adam is proven to have been culpable in that act. There needs to be documented evidence, and then you will now dismiss. And in that circumstance, you're not required to pay notice. I hope that clarifies.
Thank you, Chidinma. I believe that Peter will be reaching out to you if he has additional questions around that. I have also gone through the chat. I can't see any more questions. And but I'd like to give one more chance to the audience. If you have a question, kindly signify. Kindly signify. One question, one more. Then we'll move on. Okay, I have the chair. You have the floor, Chairman.
All right. Thank you so much, Chidinma. I'd just like to ask a quick question, right? There's been a trend on LinkedIn and questions been raised around, employers hiring managers demanding for previous payslip, right, from applicants and candidates. Do you think this is the best practice, or is this a trend that has come to stay? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I had been expecting this question on best practice because it's something that always comes up. So, as a senior colleague will say, best practice is what works for your organization. That is best practice. We'll park that by the side. And then we'll now discuss, okay, so what's this trend of employers asking for your previous evidence of previous remuneration? And this is in situations where they want to make an offer and bring you on board and they want to get to know what it is that you earned previously. So now, what is this a trend that is best practice? Best practice is what the organization says. So if the organization you're joining, their policy has said that for every employee that they are bringing on board, they would offer you, say, a 30% increase on your previous salary. So that is their policy. That's their compensation policy. That's in onboarding you, they need to offer you a 30% increase on what you were previously earning. So for that to happen, they will need to get your previous pay information. However, if their policy says that they would offer you based on the job the grade of the job and the salary band of the job that you're coming into, they also have to adhere to that. Then on the employee side as well, do you have, if your current employment, for example, Africa Prudential has a privacy rule on compensation, and I'm going somewhere else tomorrow, I cannot share information on my current compensation. I will need to tell that organization that this is what there's a privacy rule in place that I cannot share this information. And this will be reiterated when the new organization will send reference to the old organization and they would ask previous last compensation and they will say, this cannot be shared due to privacy constraints. So at all points, what is the policy in place for the organization that you're joining, for your current organization? And then if it's also your own personal conviction as well that you do not want to share and you want the organization to make you an offer, it's also okay to stand firm to that, because we would not be able to say that this is best practice or this is not best practice, because let's also understand that different organizations have different policies and different organizations have different abilities to pay. So you're going to take each on a need basis, on a case-by-case basis. You also do, as a professional that is also looking to change roles, you also do not want to waste your time where you ask the organization to make you an offer based on the grade and then you're already on a certain amount and they make you an offer that is not even at par with what you are currently earning. So in that situation, is it not better for you to share what you're currently earning so that the organization is able to make you a commensurate offer? A way around all this is from the recruitment adverts. Set the grade there. What's the grade for? You can have a range. If you do not want to be fixed, if you don't want to be boxed into a corner, you can have a range to say this role will pay between 1 and 10 or between 5 and 10. And that way, everybody that is already at 9, for example, will know that 10 is not such a good deal. Or if they do want to move, because some people also move at par. If they want to move and they say, okay, I'm fine, I'm willing to take 9, I'm willing to take 10. That way you have already limited the number of applicants that you're going to get. So you don't go and start having conversation and then you're wasting your time, their time, and at the end of the day, they come back to say for a role that is at 20 million, they come back to say they want to earn 50 million, and everybody has wasted their time. So my chairman, does that answer your question?
Yes, please, it does. Thank you. I love the perspectives.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
So
much.
Believe also has her hand
quickly.
up. Oh, I
I
don't know if
think
it's
I don't think we can take additional question. Mr. Believe, you have to forgive me,
Okay.
especially. We are running behind schedule, really big time. Mr. Believe, special apologies for me. I'd like to call on quickly Chinasa. Quickly, please, Chinasa.
Okay, it's okay.
Thank you. Chinasa, please. To appreciate our guest speaker. Is Chinasa on the call, please? Okay, Chinasa doesn't seem to be able to get through. Can I create the indulgence of the VC to appreciate our guest speaker, please? Our VC, please. In the absence of Chinasa. Because our guest has to run as well.
Thank you, GS. I trust you can hear me.
Very clearly, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Our special thanks goes to our guest speaker. Thank you so much, ma'am. Chidinma Eke, we really appreciate you taking the time to come and address us today. We are very, very grateful to you. And thank you so much for dropping your number for us and your LinkedIn.
Exactly.
We are going to definitely reach out to you, especially if we have more questions, and connect with you on LinkedIn. We appreciate you taking the time to come and lecture us today. We really appreciate your presence. So, but before we go, we know you are really tight on schedule. We have a little gift for you. Could you please, our AGS, kindly project the appreciation certificate? We have a little token for you. We plead that you accept it from us. It will be sent to your email much later
Directly,
as well.
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Our certificate of appreciation. So, okay.
Thank you, our VC.
All right. Thank you very much.
Apologies for
Thank
putting you on the spot. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. Yes.
Thank you, Chidinma. We appreciate you. Thank you for the time. Thank you. And the knowledge you have shared. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the line is, before I call on Vivian. Vivian, please be on standby. Please, we have the attendance link in the chat. Kindly fill in, register your attendance by using the link. It's already posted on the chat. Thank you.
Okay, the certificate is here projected.
Yes, already.
Yeah, you can see that here
Beautiful.
already. Please, this certificate is proudly presented to our guest speaker, Chidinma Eke, MCIPM, in recognition of your invaluable contribution as the guest speaker at the Lekki Ajah Badore chapter's monthly KSS session with the theme Navigating Recent Employment Trends, Laws and Compliance in Nigeria, holding today, Wednesday, March 12, 2025, being presented and signed proudly by our chairman, Mr. Oluwapelumi Akinola. Thank you very much once again, our guest speaker. Please appreciate this from us. We would be sending it to your email. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Vivian Adikanko, you have the floor. let's know a bit about our institute in just 2-3 minutes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Vivian.
Okay, I'm happy to be here and thank you very much, our guest speaker. I hope I'm audible enough.
Very clear, ma'am.
Okay, so today I'll just briefly speak about the Lagos State Branch Conference, which is holding on the 9th to 11th of April. I want to believe that we've all registered. And I also want to make us understand that for those of us that will not be able to make it down to Abeokuta physically, we also have the virtual attendance and registration for members. So those that would attend